Cut your mics, except Anne.
Oh,
It's worth it though. I mean, look at the size of our audience.
yeah. 53 views and 53 episodes. It's excellent.
Oh God.
It's the quality that counts, Anley. It's not the numbers.
Indeed. It's not the meat, it's the motion.
Well, that was smooth. Good evening. Welcome. This is the After Hours show. I'm Joe in Norway. Hey, Anne.
Hey, Joe.
Hey. This is Anne Lee, a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Coast. She is a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Hey there. We're slowly getting better. I mean, it's only it's only season 2, episode
Indeed.
1 now. Wow.
There are all these darn wars and stuff. Jeez. I see rhubarb. Is there a baseball
Yes,
game?
I've got pot scrubbers and lip pucker uppers. We've got 8 or 9 plants with loads and loads of rhubarb out here. I'm still in shorts and a tan, actually. Insane weather in Western Norway. We have traditionally 52 to 54 days of sunlight a year, which roughly translates to under 1,200 hours. So this is outrageous. Oh my goodness. Vitamin D, I'm getting an overload.
Yeah.
But
Indeed.
in addition to the great weather, which is overwhelmingly warm, like southern Europe, in fact, we're warmer than some places in the south of Spain. We've been drinking mass quantities of chilled liquids, such as the famed Spanish Gestapo soup and
Yum.
rhubarb soup. Gazpacho, not Gestapo.
Gestapo soup. Gotta eat it in jackboots.
So a popular Norwegian dish is cold rhubarb soup for those few
Yum.
days where you need something to cool down. And of course, we're only eating the stems because the leaves have a dangerous substance, among other things, oxalic acid, which Nancy tells me is good for scrubbing pots. I've got some blackened pots. We'll see how well it works. I'll use these for pot scrubbers later. But now I've basically got to peel these to get the fibrous parts that aren't easily digestible, and then I'm going to cut them on a diagonal, and we're going to poach them in too much sugar. Sorry, James. So about we've got you can do 2 to 3 kilos of rhubarb to 800 grams of sugar, but I was informed by my youngins that it was too sweet, so I've reduced it to 600 grams, and we'll
Okay.
see how that works. The other main component
All
is
right.
the non-traditional Madagascar vanilla bean. So I'm going to
Yum.
cut this in half, scrape out the seeds, and it adds a really nice the vanilla flakes, and the flavor of the vanilla is a nice balances well with the rhubarb. So it's a very lovely dish. And we're doing just the vegetarian version, but you can do something like I did the other day for a birthday party, muscat or nutmeg cream. So the cream will balance out the sourness for those people that can't deal with the sour. But I'm gonna get cracking on slicing these up, and I believe you've got some news to get to. There's not much
Yeah.
peace going in the world at the moment. I don't think we've
Uh,
got some issues.
we were plenty of issues. We were just, for those who are interested, there is a conference on Palestine, in Detroit, that you can look up, and people for Palestine.org, I think, is the website, and you can. It's a 3-day event and has had some important talks, reminding us of the history of Palestine, regardless of your particular point of view. Really interesting.
This was the first day, correct?
This is the first day. 2 more days, very full days. It's a pretty busy little conference, and looks like a couple thousand people are there, so that's a good thing as well. Other things that have been happening, Donald Trump went to a in the South Bronx in New York, a borough that is 67% Latino, Hispanic, whatever, and the rest is black, and it you know, he's trying to push this idea that I mean, that, you know, that they're his people, and that that a significant number are defecting Democratic Party in terms of voting. The polling is that the New York Times sort of fessed up to Nate Cohn specifically explained that it's far too soon to make any judgments about polling, and even more problematic because the types of populations that are being polled at the present moment are people who are really not going to vote, or people who are disengaged, as they refer to it. Now, I asked one author over at Coast whether there was a difference between unengaged or disengaged voters and low information voters, and of course, both terms have a kind of political frame that's built in with it. But the reality is that it doesn't tell you anything. It's not going to tell you anything until we get a lot closer to the election. But I put up something that compared the desire of Trump to have a crowd in the Bronx with people of color, with his wanting the crowds and then not getting a crowd. The first debate on the 27th will not have a crowd, will not have an audience. So
there are going to be debates.
Yeah, well, some of us are opining that Trump won't even show up because he won't have an audience, and they're going to cut his mic off after the allocated time. So it will be kind of interesting. And the current debate on that issue, the arrangements, is that Trump suddenly has decided now that he wants Biden to stand for 90 minutes. He doesn't think Biden could stand up for 90 minutes, and that he can. But I think the original plan was to have them seated across from each other on a table, which is not unusual and has been done before. But that's, it's desperate. He's desperate. I mean, this comes just after they agreed to the debate. Trump started the whole business about he wanted Biden to be drug tested before the debate, and we recall that the debate, earlier debate, Biden won both debates. In fact, people like DeSantis said that Biden won the debates in 2020. So Trump tried to, in effect, and those who were watching it could sort of see that he wanted to cough on to Biden and to give him COVID. Trump claiming, of course, that he didn't have COVID, but in fact, when he got tested, he did have COVID. And needless to say, he actually had to spend a little emergency time in the medical center. So anyway, that's and then he did all the usual palaver and craziness with Walter Reed at the Walter Reed Medical Center. So that's kind of in the offing right now. The going back to the Bronx, the crowd was very small, a couple thousand, and channel the ABC channel had a shot from their helicopter showed how small the crowd was. That didn't stop a whole bunch of trolls or bots or whatever from putting up ridiculous crowds from other types of events. The one I picked up on was somebody showed the image of Woodstock in 1969 and claimed that was a Trump rally. So, the disinformation continues. Trump made the speech. It was poorly covered. It had bad audio and video for those who care about production stuff. And a lot of people were sort of handpicked and trucked in or whatever. There were plenty of red hats, but a lot of red hats from other places. And of course, I think people they're just opportunists who decide, oh, well, I'm going to get my couple of seconds of fame. And there are a lot of those kind of folks who are willing to chant for Trump, but probably don't vote. So that's the point of the New York Times polling kerfuffle that's currently going on. Nobody, I think, from Siena who does their polling has admitted the quality of their sampling, but Nate Cohn certainly copped to it today, so that's worth your reading if you can get to that. So that happened. Since we last talked in a week, the trial is almost concluded. Well, in the sense that both defense and prosecution rested, and there will be closing statements, and it'll go to the jury sometime on Wednesday, perhaps next week. The judge wanting to leave a long weekend. Needless to say, as we've probably discussed before, and if you've been paying attention, the fact is that Trump sort of messed things up, just like he did with the E. Jean Carroll trial. That is, insisting on sequences of witnesses, or in the case of E. Jean Carroll, he took the stand, which got him into a fair amount of trouble. Trump did not want to repeat that, particularly in a criminal trial, but instead they sent in Bob Costello, who is a crony of Rudy Giuliani, and that kind of went south quickly. There's plenty of coverage of it. It's very interesting. The analysis is pretty good.
One question
on it. Yes.
Does he happen to be? Was he behaving in court like Columbo's murderers behave? Saying too much?
Well, I didn't. It's not so much saying too much, but he did a lot of nonverbal behaviors that, if you've ever served on a jury, you're going to pay attention to all the craziness, the smaller details. And there were plenty of wacky small details, as though inviting Joe Piscopo on the last day would impress the jury. I have no idea why that. It's just strange. Towards the end
actor,
of the
comedian from Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live, yes. And he's a diehard Trump supporter. But just to have him sit in the courtroom. I'm not sure what that serves. Needless to say, there were other folks. The funniest thing of the week is Congress people coming up from Washington, but who are they're in session. So fortunately, there wasn't any critical votes, but they came up and essentially all dressed in the same type of suits. That is, the men, red tie, white shirt, blue suit. So you had this weird clown show or clone show of these folks, and there were plenty of them, including Speaker of the House. You had celebrities, and I think this is that Trump thing about celebrity impressions of one kind or another. So all they did was sit in this, they sat in the stands and sort of observed a kind of
signed autographs or anything.
There were autographs later on. Boebert was there at the beginning of the week, Lauren Boebert, and somebody from an activist group wanted to get her to sign the playbill for Beetlejuice.
For Beetlejuice.
Recalling that she was caught in low light video getting handsy with her date at Beetlejuice. It was an event in Colorado that she got thrown out of because she was being obnoxious. So that was probably the best theater of the week in terms of planning and execution. The rest of the week was pretty much the same, and the advantage of having this type of court hearing is that you get a lot of mediation. That is, broadcasters were in there every day. Lawrence O'Donnell from MSNBC was pretty much in there every day, and because he does have that kind of legal experience, and of course West Wing, etc. He always has sort of trenchant remarks. Some of the other folks from MSNBC were in there a lot, more so than CNN's folks. So it's interesting just to see the difference in the two versions. CNN trying to get to the middle, and MSNBC generally staying on the left and critiquing, I think, just in reasonable terms, how good or bad the lawyering was going on in there. Needless to say, it does. The prosecution or the defense left the jury with a sort of bad impression, given that Bob Costello got into a very passive-aggressive thing with the judge, and some people noting that this was the first time in their entire lives of legal work that a judge cleared, Judge Merchant or John cleared the court, threw everybody out, and had a little talking to Bob Costello. So that may be the one little piece of lawyering that occurred that wasn't very good. Essentially, it was trying to prove that Michael Cohen was a liar. We already knew that he was a liar, and it really didn't speak to the point, and in fact, perhaps reinforce the prosecution's issue that Trump was aware that, and they've stated this all along, and the Trump people have been trying to simply discredit every witness, and they're constrained in a variety of ways. They didn't attack David Pecker. Yes, that is his name, Pecker. Last week, because he was, he's a powerful guy, and I think if the Trump people had actually attacked him on the stand, he would have. He's a prosecution witness, but if the Trump people had tried to really give him a hard time, I assume he knows where every skeleton is buried, or what closets they are in. So I think there's other issues that are going on sort of sub rosa. So that was happening. So we're going to get we may get a verdict by next week, or the week after that. We'll see. There will be attempts to delay and all the usual things. And Trump's little event in the Bronx yesterday was an attempt.
Oh, before you continue, let me cut in here. I haven't been able to get a word, get in to give a little tip
All
here.
right.
It's nice to cut them at an angle. So we're going to cook them. What I usually do is it takes takes some time to strip the fibers from the stalks. So I'll get a number of them defibered, and then I might like to slice them at an angle. Just has a better mouthfeel, and so while these are cooking, we're kind of staggering the cooking. They only take about 6 to 10 minutes to cook, depending on how big and hearty they are. So the earliest ones will completely disintegrate, and then we'll have other ones at the end that'll be more intact. So we'll get a nice mixture of soupiness or whatever. So these will disintegrate, and then we'll have full pieces to go on. So you have a nice blending, but you can stagger your adding them to the mix. And I'll just continue to peel these suckers.
I guess you can't overcook them, can you? Or maybe you can. I guess
you can.
It releases sugar.
Yeah, it only so I put a liter of water, 600 grams, 6 to 800 grams of sugar, a pinch of salt, a good pinch of salt, and then the vanilla. So these will be properly cooked. They'll be overcooked by the time I finish doing the rest of these. So.
Foolproof. Yes. All right.
And then we finish with a little cornstarch slurry to thicken it up.
Okay. Right. Not much else in Trump world other than Fannie Willis won her election, so she's still on the on the case in Georgia until the legislature somehow figures out a way to kick her off the case, which is what they're attempting to do. It's sort of a pitched battle in Georgia, and interesting only because a lot of people are now speculating there's spin on this that Trump might actually get away with it. And parallel to all this was the sort of delayed information, because I assume they've been sitting on this information of Samuel Alito's flag waving. It's just so weird, this idea of the inverted American flag on his lawn, and then ultimately a quasi-religious flag that comes from a variety of Christian evangelicals. So essentially, if we go back, they've been showing his resistance to a Biden State of the Union, where Alito vocally protests to something in the chamber during the State of the Union.
How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet that next week they'll have video footage of him doing smoke signals out the back?
Haha, hilarious. He protested when Obama said that the Citizens United ruling would open the floodgates of financial, basically, pay for play, would basically destroy any campaign finance system. He said not true under his breath. He was completely wrong. It absolutely has done that.
With respect, Alito figured actually in the pre-planning of the January 6th stuff, not that he was, colluding at all, but he was mentioned in terms of the Supreme Court support of the attempt to turn over the election. He figured in the planning documents, not that anyone has subpoenaed him or anything, but he was a key figure. I think it's the Eastman memo, but so that's there's a whole bunch of other things that will probably come up if we ever get to a DC trial, but there's stuff there.
Right.
Because some of them are counted on Alito's vote somehow being or because a single a Supreme Court justice can actually do certain things by themselves without necessarily requiring it to the
Yeah.
court to vote on stuff. So that was
So
part of
the understanding is that he was consulted by the plotters.
well, not so much that he was consulted, but there seemed to be a sort of assurance, and his name was mentioned in documents that he would go along with this whole thing, that he would help facilitate whatever needed to be done. So that's also interesting.
It's more than interesting. We have, I don't think we can understate, we have a Supreme Court that is in complete crisis. It is completely corrupt in this country. We're in big trouble.
Yes, James.
Just saying it.
Yep. No, there's no recusals. We have there's you can clearly see where the money was coming from, and of course the influence on Trump's appointments of Supreme Court justices. It's pretty much there, and Ginny Thomas, the wife of Clarence Thomas, was engaged in at least some kind of financing relative to the buses used to get some of the January 6th folks to DC. So there's stuff there. It's all on paper. It's not this is not a conspiracy theory. They're just some stuff, and we're I'm hopeful that by the time we get to the DC hearings, we'll know who planted the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC and all those other kind of things. Because I think people are just sitting on information like that flag stuff. I mean, because all that flag stuff happened around, January 6th. It really wasn't I mean, that's a while back now. So someone was sitting on that kind of information for a while. Anyway, DC, yes. Well, that's been busy in that sense. Ukraine, it's hard to say what is actually going on. There's still battles every day. The Russians still are losing people. There's they have in the results of this recent call up, they lowered the sort of conscription age in terms of mobilizing Ukrainians. Aside from probably some efforts to try and get Ukrainians who split the country and when the war started. I don't think there's many coming back, but I think some are. It's simply because, if there's ever a peace, I don't think anyone wants to reveal that they sort of ran when the invasion started, considering how many people have died. And so that's one side of it. But there are about a million Ukrainians who are now, sort of mobilized behind the existing troops. And so the news reporting has included a lot of little sort of releases, spin that suggested that there would be more NATO trainers, that some non-combat roles would be taken up by a variety of folks, French troops, etc. There have been transfers of F-16 simulators, several now, from the Czechs to the Ukrainians, and apparently they have been training support staff, etc., to support F-16. So I assume their F-16 squadrons are going to be up and running very, very soon. Some people have said that the Russian offensive has already started. It supposedly has 30 to 50,000 troops. It's not going anywhere at the present moment. There's just constant, sort of fighting back and forth over a couple of kilometers of space. It is true that the Ukrainians do tend not to want to take a lot of territory back because they just simply don't have all the artillery in place. But the understanding is by today, some of the promised ammunition has arrived. It's probably already been there, but their artillery is being supported. So if there is any sort of a major thrust or offensive, and not necessarily in the Kharkiv sector, which is north of Kharkiv city, where there has been significant fighting, but it is essentially doing the same business. It's it's a kind of stalling the Russian advance, taking advantage of the Russians on the one hand, adapting to Ukrainian techniques, but not being as well trained. I would say that given the casualty lists and the amount of equipment that's being destroyed, the Russians are getting better at using their drones. There's been a lot of drone attacks, that is small drones with like an RPG round strapped to it or whatever, that it's a pretty cheap way of doing stuff without having to unleash a massive artillery barrage. And actually it's quite selective and actually kind of interesting to see it, simply because you get to see both the infrared images from night battles and day battles as well. 6 Su-25 ground support Russian aircraft have been knocked down in the last month, which is fairly important, simply because it shows that air defense is still okay in certain instances. Unfortunately, as I've said before, there is an entire range of Russian missile that that cannot be stopped unless it's with a Patriot missile battery, and so only smaller drones get knocked down. The Ukrainians are doing what they can. They sent another one of their very weird little Cessna Cub type drones. It's literally an airplane with remote controls, and sent it about 1,000 kilometers into Russia, and struck another facility. So they're these sort of strategic strikes. Similarly, 2 ships have been either sunk or disabled. One, I think, was sunk. There's a missile cruiser that is not floating anymore, and a small minesweeper that the Black Sea Fleet is, they still have missile launching things like a couple of submarines and stuff, but the Ukrainians have taken it to them in the sense that they're attacking their airfields now in the southern part of, or the northern part, well, the southern part of the Sea of Azov. So fighters are getting hit on the ground. That is, airplanes are getting disabled and struck, MiG-29s, etc. And a couple of other things got hit, but it's pretty brutal. Glide bombs in the north and the east, and the Ukrainians do little crazy things. I mean, on the one hand, they had all these little ship type drones to come across the water and to sink ships, and they've been pretty good at that. But the Russians have decided to send up helicopters with a lot of machine guns to take out these unmanned surface vehicles. And as a result, the Ukrainians have now strapped surface to air missiles on top of these little boat drones, and so we haven't yet had an incident where they actually launch one of these darn things and knock down a helicopter. But there are interesting things happening just at a technical level that shows the Ukrainians are really moving fairly quickly on this, and this mobilization effort, I think, goes across the country in terms of building up the defense industries. That children are engaging in these sort of There's a thing that's coming up. They're going to show innovative technology that's been developed by school children, which is they're just doing junior achievement stuff, but a lot of it is related to both medical support as well as a variety of other things in terms of drone warfare. So it's actually quite an interesting struggle from that point of view. Otherwise, there's been crazy stuff in the Baltic. Russians decided they would move the buoys that established the sea boundaries for the Baltic Sea around around St. Petersburg, at the mouth of the Baltic, and a little bit around Kaliningrad. So they're moving the buoys in order to reestablish, and they've made up a bunch of hoo-ha about what this is happening, but they have been moving them around to sort of figure out where the borders are. And as a result, some countries like Sweden are commenting on whether this is an offensive thrust or they're being a little nutty, planning on taking the island of Gotland, which that may not seem important to you, but it actually sits sort of in the eastern side in the middle of the Baltic, and it's a kind of strategic thing. And it's and they have troops. The Swedes have troops and stuff, and it's part of their NATO planning. But it is just simply interesting that once you start thinking about a live border of Finland and Russia, which has gotten extensive now that Finland is part of NATO, it can get really complicated in both the north and south sides of the Baltic. With other little agitations that have been happening relative to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. They all, they are sort of together, but sort of doing things differently. Contributing parts of they are doing some joint stuff. I think it's Estonia and Ukraine are doing joint training, so that there's a lot more knowledge transfer back and forth, and they're sort of prepared for something stupid happens, to be prepared militarily. So all of that is happening all at once. Oh yes, the Putin decided that he would waive the nuclear option again, moving a tactical nuclear weapon sort of, as a pseudo training exercise or something closer to Ukraine. It's just, a lot of fakery, but on the other hand, it does force NATO to sort of think about these things. I'm sure they're quite actively worrying about those matters. And yes, there's still nuclear weapons on both sides, so it's not like nothing can happen. Some people are clearly worried about what 2020 will look like, especially if Russia starts losing. Let's see what else. Well, all of the other things are the same. The Russians are trying to co-opt the areas that they seized and make them all Russian. There's in Ukraine, there's a significant part of the population that was and perhaps still is pro-Russian. So there's a whole variety of worries about that degree of security. There was a story recently on Andrew Yermak, who is essentially he's not really officially something. He's sort of the second in command to Zelensky. And no, he gets very little press, and a lot of people don't, but he does a lot of stuff. He essentially acts as the vice president, and it is problematic relative to, they have been firing people. A couple of people got arrested. A lot of stuff going on, and this is a part of how war operates. Similarly, on the Russian side, there's been a turnover of major military figures. It is, as they say, a regular feature of when there's a new election. There's a lot of change in the military and in the cabinet, and that's happened with some key people being either kicked upstairs, kicked laterally, whatever. And so it's really never been identified as one or two or whatever. But it's constantly and continuously happening. Whether it has any effect on a battle in the field is another kind of question. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Ukraine. There's plenty more to talk about Ukraine. It is, there have been missiles that have hit Kyiv. There is some worrying about missiles that fly through Poland. Poland has been discussing whether they're going to knock down Russian missiles that fly over Poland, because they can do that in terms of Western Ukraine. There's sort of a little sliver that if the Russians send something via Belarus, it can fly over. It might fly over Poland at a little corner of Poland, and so the Poles are sort of worried about whether they have to intercept those. And then, of course, there's the usual from Romania and Moldova, and there's essentially a people's revolution going on in Georgia right now, which sort of resembles 2014 in Ukraine. which is getting a little tense, and we don't really, there's not a lot of press coverage of it, and it's still moving along, so that can have an effect as well. Relative to Georgia and the EU, which they're interested in. Let's see what, and then there's a to reflect on it much further. There is a military exercise that is actually it's a training exercise, but the People's Republic of China's Navy, which always it's PLAN, it's the People's Liberation Army Navy, or the whatever, you know, in English that makes little sense, but it's the Navy. They've encircled Taiwan, and it's within, you know, the boundaries, and it's just a training exercise. So, you know, but you know, the Taiwanese, because they've just installed a new president, you know, this is sort of saber rattling, and Taiwan has a 2 million person army, so it's not like they're, you know, they're not chopped liver in this particular moment, but it is sort of an interesting time. You know, accidents can and will happen, and this is going to be problematic. So there's more tensions about that as well. I think that covers most of my little news stuff. How is your stuff doing?
Cool. I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but you can see all of the little specks from the vanilla.
Cool. Yum.
Almost
yum.
finished.
You bring it to a full boil and then let it simmer?
Yep.
Is that how you do it?
Yep.
Okay.
The rolling boil, and now I've got a cornstarch. Well, this is potato starch instead of cornstarch.
Slurry.
Just thicken it up with the potato starch slurry.
All right. Yum. Yum. I can, there have been, without getting too far into it, there's, you know, the Israel-Gaza thing still continues on. It continues in a kind of really awful way, particularly when you hear little anecdotal stories, and disinformation, tremendous amount of disinformation, some of which, you know, is just scandalously awful. And of course, there's always, you know, picking sides. And in the United States, there have been plenty of student demonstrations of one kind or another. Most of them resolved rather quickly once people sort of figured out, well, if the administration takes a serious approach to this whole business, and people will get, they'll be able to clear the sites, maintain order. In other cases, they just, you know, allowed the people to be there, and, you know, it's almost the end of the term for most people. So unless it interferes with commencements, which is kind of what was going on, at Harvard, a bunch of graduates decided they would walk out during the ceremony, particularly because some Harvard students were suspended for their participation in protests. So that was an interesting issue. They did
some
arrest
schools
one of
canceled their commencement.
Yeah. You know, it depends on the type of school. I mean, you know, some of us didn't, you know, if you go to a large university, they won't even notice that you're there or not there. It's just, and in other places, you know, they will notice if you're there. So that it's been that kind of range of activity. At UCLA, they managed to arrest one of the counter protesters who came in with a bat or a club or something and was trying to, and they tracked him down because his mother gave him up, which I find quite amusing. Anyway, but he was quite identifiable. He was one of those ones wearing a kind of a pale white kind of mask, and you could, you know, face mask, and you could see. You couldn't see who it was, but he eventually did take it off. I think somebody caught it on video, and so they did both recognition of him, but the fact that his mother gave him up was quite amusing. And his mother copped to the issue that he just wanted to go there and beat some people up. So that was a kind of it's not going to help him at his trial. So
Got a whole bowl full of fiber, rhubarb
Stuff.
fiber.
compost file stuff.
Mhm.
Harsh has a question. Harsh, you want to tell us a little bit?
Yeah, Professor. So I have a question regarding the Russia-Ukraine thing. So I was listening to Chris Hedges in one of the podcasts, and
Mhm.
was saying ultimately the resolution would be both the parties essentially discussing this thing out. Like, so do you know if the peace negotiation is happening at all, or they're just constantly fighting still?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just I think negotiations have been going on continuously, and I think it's just going to come to a breaking point at some moment. Somebody's going to decide, that whatever deadline, nobody's making any clear deadlines, although there were some, and then they failed, and then there were some other subversions of those deadlines. So I don't know. I have no idea. It's hard to follow. It's just hard to follow. It's very sad.
Because he was saying that the average age of Ukrainian fighter has now increased quite a lot. Actually, it's like 40 something.
Yes.
Which is kind of very scary, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's everything is as clear as mud in these matters, and it's very distressing. I would assert that, and a claim was made during the conference earlier today in Detroit that people were buoyed by the fact that the student efforts were running in favor. So I don't know. That's kind of where we are with these things, I think.
And
Yeah, that was very inspiring to hear that the people in Gaza are looking at what's happening in the States and across Europe at the campuses as giving them hope, but that they weren't talking about the leaders in Europe. It was all geared towards what the students on the ground are actually doing.
Yeah.
It's very important.
do you think that let's say the next administration that comes in, right, for US, let's say if it's not Biden administration, then this war would be, like, for lack of a better word, would stop quickly, or will that be prolonged still?
It would actually continue. All you would see is, I mean, if this is continuing after November, I don't see it happening after November. I see us getting to some ceasefire, maybe not soon, but there's going to be a ceasefire before the election. Biden cannot. I don't think he can survive in one sense if there is isn't a ceasefire by then. And what Trump would do is simply, oh God, there would be a pretty much as Trump likes to call them, bloodbath. It's already a bloodbath, but it's just.
I don't want to rain on your parade, Anne, but Bibi said that Bibi or Gallant that nothing is going to stop this war.
Yeah, well,
I assume that's election cycle. U.S. election cycles be damned.
it's when he talks in English, it's for us. It's meant for domestic consumption. So
Well, bad news for Bibi, but there is no war. This is just a one-sided
Slaughter.
decimation, basically. It's not a war.
well, yes. Yeah, it's pretty awful. I think we're really not getting enough of the reporting, but it is pretty awful in there. Well, we're getting closer to the end of our little events here. Other stuff's going to happen tonight.
Oh yes. I believe I have
John,
something up here.
looks nice. I'm hungry.
Oh, did you want me to say
yeah.
something, Ian?
Well, while Joe is getting this up here, you want to tell us a little
Got
bit
the
about?
schedule
Well,
here.
he's going to go through the schedule. You can mention
There we
it
go.
when we're come to it. What I was going to do at 5 o'clock has been moved to 3 o'clock on Saturday. We've done our little after hours deal, and let's go down the schedule. John, you want to talk about Twilight Zone?
Yes, tonight on the Twilight Zone, we have a one-man show starring Mickey Rooney. The name of the episode is Last Night of the Jockey. And it is it's something else.
Indeed.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will like it.
Well, it's coming in almost in about 40 minutes or so. We're gonna
Yes.
watch Twilight Zone and probably make a lot of noise about it. After that, the mega festival Onam, not Onan or Oman, but Onam. Harsh, you want to talk a little bit about this in Kerala?
Yeah. So this is I'm continuing with my mega festival series because I'm lazy to create slides for my the show that
No
I want.
slides.
I don't have it. Otherwise, I would have gone for the Discovery of India again, restarted, but yeah, I don't have time for it, so that's why I'm starting with this, like continuing with this. So
Alright.
this one is again Mega Festival India that is celebrated in the southern part of India. It's in the communist state of Kerala, and it's a 10-day festival known as Onam, which is a harvest festival, and there are a bunch of events as well as amazing food. So this Australian chef basically tours around and figures out what happens. He also participates in a boat race, which is pretty amazing. So check that out.
All righty. That's for Friday. Saturday at 2 o'clock is our freeform literalist reading, writing, and whatever workshop. So if you're working on something, please bring it in. I may actually bring in the little thing I'm working on for Sunday for the anti-capitalist meetup. I'm reviewing a Kohei Saito's and there was a review of Kohei Saito's work, the thing about growth, and I finally read it again and came across some other things that I wanted to yammer about. So that's I'm writing a thing for that, and I have another issue about how that's being explicated. That's sort of interesting to me. Anyway, it's only interesting to me. So that's at 3 o'clock. I'll do some of that. I did a thing on, I prepared a thing on distributive justice today. And so I'll do that thing on that at 3 o'clock tomorrow. I think isn't it Valley Box tomorrow? I didn't get any.
Haven't heard back from the usher, Kathleen or Frankie. So I didn't put it on the schedule. I wasn't sure. I couldn't find any. There was nothing on the YouTube. So maybe on hiatus.
Okay. Could happen. Yeah, because it is Memorial Day weekend for those who weren't paying attention, and Monday is a holiday for some folks. There will be music, of course, in the evening on Saturday, and then on Sunday, there's the Art Attack Zoom group at 2, sort of running parallel to Hammer and Sickle. A lot of people are just simply working outside these days, so if there may
that
not
includes
be anything,
me,
or else
we're back out at the
add,
farm, so I will be. It's now officially past the Constitution Day of Norway, so we can officially plant outside now. We still might get snow. We've got a kitchen garden to put in. Maybe we'll get some lettuces, hopefully some squash. So I might need some help planning out the garden here. I'd appreciate any tips.
Oh, good. So yes, and it's always scenic anyway.
It's at 2 o'clock.
That stuff. Otherwise, I'll strap a camera onto my lawnmower. You can watch me mow the lawn. Anyway, Weekly Marks is at 3 o'clock. I haven't quite decided where to go with this. I mean, we have a bunch of things to read. I can't remember whether we did lecture 4 or not last weekend. I think we did, and so I may introduce a new thing, and it may be, well, it'll be a Marx thing, needless to say, and we'll actually read Marx himself in the particular thing. And that will precede, of course, at 5 o'clock, the Columbo watch party. John, would you like to tell us about the Columbo episode? Or will we have more Shatner? No.
If only, Anne, if only. No, it's called Undercover. And some people really like it, and some people really don't.
Oh, there we go. Those are the best ones in Columbo, I think.
Again, it's
dear.
breaking with the structure of Columbo.
Okay. Well, those are always interesting.
Yeah. Interesting in one way or another, yeah.
And there will be the Soul Social for Sunday. Lane, can you give us a preview?
Well, you need your straw hats on, you need a bit of hay in the mouth, and a banjo, because it's American folk this week.
Oh
Are we
no!
watching Green Acres?
So we did British folk. We've done British folk for the last 2 weeks, and a little cross-pollination of cultures. American folk this week.
It's quite
It'll be
illuminating.
very interesting. A lot of political activism is involved.
That's good.
Speaking of Green Acres, I've got some angelic rhubarb soup here. This is can be served warm or chilled. It's very nice, cool down. I've got
There
the
we go.
vanilla in there, little spots of
Yum.
vanilla.
Yum.
So it's 2 to 3 kilos of rhubarb, 600 to 800 grams of sugar, depending on how tart or sweet you like it. Vanilla pod, scrape it, pinch of salt, starch slurry, thicken it up at the end. 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes to cook.
Nice.
Oh,
Is there any?
peel
you can
your rhubarb.
You need to make a rhubarb crumble. Whoa. Rhubarb crumble in the country, Joe. Oh, gorgeous.
I had a Furchtekake from a relative that visited here the other week, and that was, it's kind of like an inverted crumble. Very similar. Traditional Norwegian cake that looks like a Linzer tart with the lattice.
Alrighty. Okay. Well, I think we're about the end of our little week. 30 minutes until Twilight Zone. So hang in there, folks. We'll try to do better next week.
Thank you, Ann. Hey, this is James. I just wanted to throw in the fact that even the rhubarb, the part you're eating, is quite high in oxalates. And if you're a kidney stone farmer, you should avoid celery and rhubarb, both, especially almonds and spinach, apparently. So there's my little tip.
Some of my favorites.
Yeah, me too. I used to take a whole package of frozen spinach, thaw it out, and heat it up and put a big pile of butter on it. Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Yep. We'll do better next week.
See ya. Ooh, that's tart.